Okay, so first of all, I know the lighting looks kind of weird. I'm actually filming this at night. I'm using my iPhone flashlight, and that's why the shadow and the lights, doesn't look all that great. Usually, I like to film during the day when I get the natural sunlight, but I've been really busy in the day. But I want to get something out because it's been a few days, and I'm actually going through something right now that might be a worthy video. The last couple months, I've been going through, I think, a quarter life crisis, they call it, or whatever it is, something really, really weird, where all of a sudden, it's like my brain is totally changing and totally shifting, and I'm starting to have thoughts about like marriage and children that I never had before. And I'm 25 now, which doesn't feel that old. But when I stop and think about it, it's like, yeah, that's actually not quite 18 anymore, not quite 21 anymore. It's definitely different. And it's like the last 2 months, all of a sudden, I start thinking about relationships and like dating and like my future and like having an actual girlfriend, like actually living with someone, and one day maybe even getting married and even having children, which is something terrifying. And it's something that my entire life, I've never been that guy. Like I've always been the guy like very happily single, very happily without any children, very happily not married. And I always like didn't want that. I specifically like avoided that. I avoided relationships really kind of as much as possible. I've never really had a serious long-term girlfriend, and I've never really wanted that. But in the last 2 months, it's just like my brain is just shifting and changing, and all of a sudden, I'm starting to think like that, and I'm starting to, and it's freaking me out because I don't feel ready for it at all. It's not really what I want at all. But it's like, man, I had some really weird thoughts. Like I see a pretty girl, and I think, oh, I wonder if she would be a good mother. Like, what? That's like, which is totally crazy for me because it's not at all how I think. But it did make me think though, like long term, being an MRA, being a men's rights activist, how is that going to affect my future? Like in terms of dating, in terms of marriage, in terms of having children one day. I did that video about dating as an MRA in LA. I put the link down below if you want to see that. But it's like, when you're younger, right, it's not as big of a deal. Like when you're 18, for example, you don't really think about marriage or kids or long-term dating. And it's kind of fun, to kind of say what you want. And if you have a controversial belief about something and, a girl won't date you for it, it's whatever. But when you start getting older and when you start thinking about, am I going to get married one day? Am I going to have kids one day? How is that going to affect it? Because what I learned on the Bumble experiment is that many women are fine with it, but many women are not. And some women, as soon as they found out that I'm an MRA, that was an instant deal breaker and the end of the conversation. So I think, what happens if I meet a great girl? And it's not going to come up right away because being an MRA is not something I'm going to say on the first date, or the first day. But eventually, maybe 2 weeks, maybe 2 months, maybe 6 months, eventually somehow it's going to come up, either on my channel, or she's going to see my Reddit, or we're going to be watching something on the news or in a movie. Somehow, eventually, of course, it is going to come. And it's something that I would say eventually anyway. Probably much sooner than 6 months. Probably much sooner than 2 months, actually, come to think of it. What if all of a sudden that totally messes it up? And it's a huge turnoff, and then she says, nope, I don't want to do this. And this great woman that I liked, all of a sudden that's just gone. Because the thing is, being an MRA, it's become a big part of my life, but it doesn't feel like a big part of my personality. Like it doesn't feel like who I am, in my day-to-day life. But it's just something that's kind of there. And I made videos before on like how weird it is, like the perception people have of the men's rights movement. You tell them that and they think, oh, you're like alt-right, or you're like a Nazi, you're like an incel, or you're this, you're that, which is like, hearing that is so bizarre because, of course, to me, my views are normal. Like everybody kind of in their own headspace feels like what they think is normal. And you kind of like go through your day-to-day life thinking everything's normal, everything's cool, but then you forget, you suddenly remember, oh wow, a significant number of the population would look at me in this very, very negative way, which is extremely strange to think about that. But there's been a lot of weird stuff like this on my mind, actually. But I do want to get back to doing videos every day. I know this doesn't look as good doing it at night like this, but it's kind of what I have for now. If you haven't seen the dating as an MRA in Los Angeles video, I basically put that I'm an MRA on my Bumble account just to see what would happen. And I put that link down in the description below. But yeah, let's see what happens, because, I feel like real life is kind of slowly but surely setting in.